Hello, people. All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir. Good morning.
Good morning and welcome, all six of you to another exciting DDM class. All right. Um, hmm. I see, if I should plot an attendance graph, I can see it curbing on a downward spiral. Is there something happening today? Why, most persons are
I
not
think
here?
people just still sleeping.
Oh wow. Um okay. All right. Well, I was given a couple minutes for them to awaken, but I don't see them yet. And we are on to a new topic today. Um all right. Right. Today we are supposed to move into InDesign. This class marks 1 week after we have completed the exercises. So I hope everybody managed to get in their exercises. All right. Let's see. Right. So we're gonna move on to InDesign. But before we do that, I am curious as to know how how you all managed in the class activity number 3. All right, let's take a look here. Okay, this is what now? This is 2023. Oh wow. Not many people did this activity. Hmm. Well, some people got it right. Is there anybody here who got most of the questions right? Anybody who is in the class now? No? All right. Well, I also wanted to go through that as well, right? So, let's see. The first question, right? The first question asks, what is the estimated real world height and width that can be produced from your camera in portrait mode based on the distance viewed from your presentation board, right? And we were supposed to have worked this out. Now, I think some of us got this right. So the camera, here it is. The camera said that it had a 8.2 megapixel resolution with UHD 1, and we did work that out. So UHD 1 is 3840 by 2160, right? And we said that that was going to be 1.5 meters away from the average viewer, right? So we divided the resolution by the DPI. So that is 3840 divided by 120. All right, so that is and that is 32. So the real world width, right, is 32. And what is the real world height? Anybody have their calculator that can just share with me quickly? So that is 2160 divided by 120. Anybody work that out?
Exactly.
18. All right. All right. So what this translates to is that this can be printed on a paper that is 32 inches wide by 18 inches tall. So this is saying that if you snap a picture with your S8 and you print it on a paper that is anywhere in the region of 32 inch by 18 inch, it will be 100% sharp, right? But if it is experienced as a presentation board, right? Those who put the width to be 32 and the height to be 18 got that right. And most people actually got that right, so that is good. But where people started to fall down, let's see. The second question said, where did it go? Here it is. The second question said, which frame should you position the photo from your camera in? And should the image be taken from your phone in portrait mode or landscape mode? Right? I remember you can turn your phone different ways, right? Note, you want to position the photo in the largest possible frame where it will not be blurry, right? So should it go to frame A or frame B? All right. Well, all we have to do is to compare the distances. So where is it? All right. So we know that the width of this is 14 and the height of this is 20. The width of this is 10 and the height is 11. According to our calculations, here we know that we can get 18 by 32 inches, right? So if we want the photo to be positioned in the largest possible area, and what I will do for you guys is I'm going to grab this picture. All right. I'm going to put it out here so that you guys can see. All right. Now, if this is 18 inches, and this is just a rough estimation, but if that is 18 inches, then that means 20 inches is a little bit bigger if we turn it in landscape mode. Do you guys see that?
Yes, sir.
Right. So if if I turn it in portrait mode now, this is 18 inches, but the space on the board that we're going to put the picture is actually 14 inches. So we have more than enough width, and the height is 32 inches, and the height of where we're putting the poster is 20 inches. So if we take a picture in portrait mode, we can always crop it down, but that will give us the best resolution to the image. All right. So if your answer was frame A, but in portrait mode, then your answer would have been correct. All right. So congrats to those who got that one correct. All right. Let's look at the other part of the question now, where it is saying, yes, what after positioning the photo, so that means that the photo is now in frame A. So in frame B, what resolution should your render images be generated from in the Lumion software, right? And this is where you would determine what values are closest to the resolution that you need, right? So let's look at that. So we know that frame B is 11 inches by 10 inches, right? And we want to, in the Lumion program, select the right, we want to select the right size, right? So we already know the formula. Where are you, formula? Right. There we go. We already know this formula, which is saying that the resolution of the image divided by the DPI gives you the real print height and real print width, right? So by using simple cross multiplication, right, we already have the DPI. That's good. We already have the real print height and real print width, because this is the size. This is the real print height, which is 11 inches, and the real print width, which is 10 inches, right? So sometimes when you guys want to fit something on your sheet, you will already know the size of your sheet. In the case of rendering, you don't necessarily want to just render at a resolution that is too big, and then you're going to, what is the disadvantage, I would ask? Anybody here can tell me, because we discussed it. Why would we want to render at a resolution that is closer to what the resolution should be and not like 10 times bigger? Like, why would we just render at the largest size that Lumion can give us? Can anybody tell me the answer?
Say because it would have been pixelated, you'd have looked more pixelated than when you do it to the closer, then you do it to the closer resolution.
That answer is incorrect. So let me rephrase the question. If Lumion can render at small, medium, large, and super large, let's just imagine that those are the sizes that you choose in the rendering software. Small, medium, large, and super large. Now, you could just render at super large and just say, you know what, I'm just going to render at the maximum thing, because, you know, I don't know if the image is going to be too blurry or not. So I'm just going to render at the maximum size, and that will cover it. So my question is to you is, why is it better? What is the advantage of rendering to the size you actually need more than rendering to overkill size, right? And for those of you who maybe have played around with rendering programs, maybe you have an idea. So I'm throwing that one out. Can anybody tell me why is it better to render closer to the size that you need than just maxing out the resolution of the image you're rendering? Who's going to answer that one for me? What was that? Shanil Watson that said she wanted to answer. What's the answer, Shanil?
Sir, no, I never hear me say that.
Come on, I could. You sure? Okay, just it give me what reason you think. Right? This is not something that you have to calculate out on a calculator. Just like, you know, what commonsensical reason do you think? Like, I can just max out and just render at the maximum resolution. So why care if I don't need to render at the maximum resolution, right? I mean, you know what I mean? I don't know. You go in the supermarket and you really only need 3 items, but you say, you know what? Let me just max out my shopping cart. Because, you know, if I max it out, then I will have the items that I need and anything else that I want. So what's the disadvantage of doing that? The supermarket analogy. What's the disadvantage of doing that? I know y'all can tell me this.
Unwanted surface.
What was that? Pringle?
I said you might have unwanted surface.
Unwanted surfaces? You mean in the render, or are you talking about the supermarket thing?
I guess both, because you use the one to really you'd have unwanted surface, so it's basically overlooked in a sense.
That answer is not correct. Maybe 5% of it could be correct, so that's a good try, or 10% of it could be correct, but not really. But let me ask you the question based on the analogy. You're supposed to pick up 5 items at the supermarket. You just need 5. But you say, you know what, I'm just going to get 20 items because my shopping cart can hold 20, so I'm just going to pick up 20 items. Like, what would be the disadvantage or the negative thing if that was to happen? Can anybody tell me?
Cost more money, sir.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because you really only needed to spend money for 4 items. Right? So, you know, maybe getting extra items is not that bad, but if you don't need it, I mean, you know, anybody make salads a lot, or you buy fruits, you know, what happens if you buy too much fruits one time? I mean, and you can't eat it off. They're just going to sit and spoil, and then basically you'd have wasted your money. So, you know, it's not all the while that you should just spend what you have. Now, in terms of rendering program, it is not money that you're spending, but what are you spending? Can anybody tell me?
Sir, time.
Exactly. As a matter of fact, just this week, I rendered some floor plans, right? And what was I using? I was using Twinmotion. Do you guys know of a program called Twinmotion? Some of you? None of you?
Yes, sir.
All right, cool. So it's kind of like kind of like Lumion, right? And they have this groundbreaking that's going to be in another couple of days. Actually, I think it's going to be tomorrow. I can think. I'm trying to remember. But anyway, the point of what I'm saying is that I rendered some pictures, right? And see if I can find a sample here to show you. Right, so this was one of those units, right? So you can see the plan. And, you know, it looks fine. I mean, let me see, zoom is set to, let me put it at the maximum quality so that you can, right? So this was the resolution that I rendered, right? And this is a PDF and it looks fine. But when I printed it, it looked quite horrible, very pixelated. And I mean, if you guys are looking at this on your screen, it looks absolutely fine. Now, imagine that you have this groundbreaking ceremony now, and they're going to print these out on 24 by 36 inch presentation boards, and they're going to have it pinned up in the lobby and all kind of stuff. And high possibility most people will be experiencing this relatively close, I guess. So it's not really like a studio presentation. Maybe it's a little bit closer, right? And on screen, it looks absolutely fine. Now, there's no way I can show you the printed version because I don't know if you will, or probably you would, see the difference. Maybe the compression through Zoom wouldn't really show you as much, but it did look bad. No, I knew that I needed to render this at a higher resolution, right? So when I go into Twinmotion, I mean, I could render it at 10,000 pixels by 10,000 pixels if I wanted it to. I think Twinmotion makes you render up to 16K resolution. And you can go even higher if you switch it to a special mode called tiling, right? But do I need to render this image at 10,000 by 10,000? Now, to give you a point, I did re-render some higher resolution images, and I don't know if, let me see if we can see the differences on Zoom here, right? So, right. So these here was what I rendered originally. Yes, these were them. And it looks fine. I mean, if you're looking on this now on your Zoom, you're saying, oh, well, that looks fine. The resolution looks decent. But as I said, when you're displaying things on a computer screen, the resolution on a computer screen is much lower. Or let me put it that way. The DPI, the dots on your computer screen are much farther apart than the dots of a printer spraying points or dots on a page, right? So a good example of this is who drives through Ligani, or no, Half a Tree, and you see these billboards that are put up, the screen billboards, you know, the one that they put together, they have it at a lot of concerts and those things. Anybody know the screens that I'm talking about?
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, have you ever gone right up to it and look at them? Like, you can actually see the pixels, right? But those screens are not meant for you to experience them from so close. They're really meant for you to experience from far. If you ever went to like any concert with an artist and there's usually a big screen showing them, and if you've ever seen when those screens get put up, it's like these little blocks of mini screens that work together. But if you are really up close to those screens, like you can't even make out the figure, right? So think of your computer screen like that, right? But when you print something, the little dots that make up the image Think about when you did your pointillism exercise in first year, when you had to do the dot, 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 dot. You know, a printer can put those dots so close together, much more closer than how dots can be put together on a computer screen. Anyway, I rendered a high resolution version, and this was the high resolution version. Now, when you look at them, I mean, the lighting looks a little different. Yeah, it does look a little different, but it's the same image, right? And on the computer screen, both of them look fine. Like, oops, sorry, it's the wrong unit. Hold on. Yeah, that's the same unit, right? So on the computer screen, both of them looks the same. Bigger for you. Right. Now, if I kind of zoom in a little bit more, let's say I zoom into the corner of this bed right here, and then I zoom into the corner of this bed right here. Now, can you guys spot a difference? I mean, apart from the fact that one is a little brighter.
Yeah, sir. The one on the one to the left look. One to the right more smoother.
Right. So the one on here, like, even look on the textures on the wall here, and look on the texture of the wall here. Now, when you zoom in, you can see. So you see this blurriness that's right here, but here it's much more defined, right? So the image on the right, in twin motion, took about 5 minutes to render at this resolution, right? About 5-6 minutes. And the image on the left took like 2 seconds, right? Now, there were multiple floor plans, like about 6 of them. So you have to multiply 5 by how long that took, right? So what I'm trying to say is that don't look on the time, because it might be saying 5 minutes, sure, 6 minutes, that's a little bit of time. Look on the percentage, right? Right? It took about, I don't know, like 400% more time if you look at it, or put it this way, one image took 5 seconds and another image took 5 minutes, right? So that's like the first image taking only like 1% of the time. Now, if you scale that time up, right? Let's say that I was rendering, I don't know, it's a hotel building. So there are like 300 different, no, not so much, but like 20 different units, right? And I need to render them. And every time I make an error on one, I need to render the whole thing again, right? So I'm just trying to show you how time can end up becoming very valuable. Because if I didn't need to render at, okay, the resolution that I rendered this image at, let's take a look at it. Got the file info. This is 4000 by 4000 pixels. If I look on this one is 1920 by 1920, right? So this image here versus this image here. So this is almost twice the resolution, and it took more than 3 times the time to create it. So if I just said, you know what, let me just make it the maximum that Twinmotion allows me to make it, which is about 16,000 by 16,000 pixels. It would take me about an hour and a half to render one plan. So that's what I'm trying to say, guys. Like, the reason that you want to do these calculations is because you don't want to overspend, because it would be wasting time. You know, you can make back the money that you lost, but you can't make back the time, right? So when I did the calculations, I didn't need to do more than 4000 by 4000. Hence my render time was like 5-6 minutes. multiply by about 6 plans, right? That's like half an hour. So I had to sit there in the office for half an hour waiting for these pictures to render, right? And let's say that the client sees it and say, can you make the bathroom sink a little bit more white? Okay, no problem. So now I have to edit all of them on the plans, and then I have to wait another half an hour again. So, I mean, time is just so important, guys. And what I'm trying to say is that in this particular question, where it's telling you, which asking you, what resolution should you render at in your render program? And most times, students especially, you tend to just max out everything. You know, just say, I want it to be the sharpest, prettiest. So I'm just max it out. And this is why I'm saying you don't need to. So back to this calculation now. I have the DPI. I know that already because based on the distance, this is going to be 120. And I know my real print height and my real print length. So that is going to be 11 inches. And the other one is going to be 10 inches. They're like almost the same. It's almost a square. So all I have to do now is cross multiply, right? Everybody remember that from maths? Maths days, right? So therefore, 120, get your calculators ready, guys. Multiply by, let's do 11, which is the height. It's going to give you what?
1320.
How much?
1320.
Right, 1320. And the other one, which is basically the same, which it is 120 times 10, is going to give you, come on, guys. Right, let's add a 0. Right. So then you say to yourself, oh, so in Twinmotion, I really don't need to render this more than 1320 by 1200. Now, if you remember the image that I showed you in my picture earlier, which is it closed? Right. Right. The image on the left, I rendered at 1920 by 1920, and it took me like, I don't know, 30 seconds, less than a minute, definitely. Right. I mean, so you could only spend a couple seconds to render out the picture for your thing, right? Versus spending half an hour to render the picture. And at the end of the day, you will not get the benefit of waiting half an hour to render the picture. I mean, if you have more use for it, like let's say you want to use it on your presentation board, but you also want to put it in a document or a magazine, then yeah, you're going to render at a higher resolution. But if you're just throwing it on your presentation board, to which most people are doing, then you just need to render at this resolution. Also, remember that you can scale up to 50% of the resolution and technically still get away with the image looking relatively sharp. So there's no need for you to render at 10,000, the maximum of the program, when your calculations show you clearly that you really only need this amount. All right. Now that doesn't answer the question. What you're supposed to do is that in Twinmotion, it will give you values like this. And then you must determine which one of these do you pick? Which one of these is closest to the resolution that you want? So now that you're armed with the information, you can just go, and the link is right here actually. So you could actually just go to the website and then try and find the resolution that is closest to what you want. Right? So what was it again? It was 1200. So you know that you couldn't pick this one because Sure, the width is okay, but the height is too small, right? So you would want to look for something that's fine. And in this case, well, HD works, just does it by 1080? No, HD is actually too small because the 1080 is too small. WQXGA is kind of okay. But it's a little overkill. QXGA is actually maybe just in the ballpark, right? Because you can see the resolution of each of these, and with all of the ones above, the height figure is, let me see, what is your height figure again?
I think I want 1,000.
Yeah, 1200. So your
Oh,
height
12.
figure is 1200, right? So this 1200, so 1920 by 1200, the WUXGA would be the preferred resolution, because all the other ones, actually no, wait, UXGA is better, yep, because it is smaller, right? It is smaller, so it's 1600 by 1200, right? So there's no need to render 1900 when you only need 1600 by 1200. All right, but anything below this, this is too small, that is too small, this is too small, because 1200 was your limit. All right. All right, so if you selected UXGA, then your answer would be correct. So you see, guys, it was really not that hard. But more importantly, what I want you to realize is that a lot of people don't realize coming out of DDM that these are things that they face every day. And then when they face it, they're just like, sure, I'll just pick the largest picture. Can't bother. It won't hurt. I'll wait the half an hour and get a super big image, and I know that that will be enough. I mean, if you can afford it, then fine. But my job is to teach you the right way to do it. Now, the last question here is saying that what format should you use for AutoCAD drawings? Now, who can tell me the answer to this? When you draw the plan in AutoCAD, what should you save it as? Who can tell me the answer?
DWG, sir.
Well, that would not be correct. Will it be correct? Well, DWG is not an option, I believe. When you go on the board.
Oh,
Remember,
then PDF then, sir. PDF.
exactly. And why PDF?
Because when you go on the PDF, you can actually see the it shows the information on the lines and then.
All right, exacto mundo. So good. Not quite the answer I was looking for, but I give you 40% for that answer. Anybody else? I'm looking for somebody to hit the nail on the head. Why should we choose PDF?
Because of vector also.
Aha, exactly. And vector images are resolution independent, which means that it doesn't depend on the little squares, and you have to have many squares to get a sharper image. All right. If you remember when we watched that video on vector, we realized that a vector line doesn't depend on pixels, it's always 100% sharp. So so that is why we can use PDF. But there's also additional vector formats such as EPS. I don't know if you guys ever heard of EPS. AI, which is Illustrator, right? Of course, that's a vector program, and SVG, right? So these are all vector file formats, including PDF, of course, and PDF is the most popular one. All right, guys. So you see, this question was really not that hard. All right, now I see most of you guys are here. So what we're going to be doing is moving ahead on our topic for today. Now, remember, we're going to be using Illustrate InDesign today, right? So for those of you who have InDesign, I want you to fire it up now. And as per usual, we're gonna take a short 5-minute break, and then we're going to jump into the exercise today, which, guess what? It won't be a very long exercise. All right, guys. So I want you guys to, how much of you have your InDesign ready for today? And show of hands, virtual hands. Wow, nobody? Nobody has InDesign ready? Okay, 1 person, 2 person, okay. All right, so what happened to the rest of you guys? You having trouble with the software?
Yes, sir. Haven't got it yet.
Okay. All right, well, well, try to see if you can get it by tomorrow. Are you getting through to Mr. Campbell? Do you guys, is he helping you out to get the program? I know some of you have bigger technical challenges. Some people are trying to secure a computer, and some are using the lab. I mean, the software is in the lab, so that's, you know, but you have to physically go there. All right, so we're gonna take a 5-minute break, and then we are gonna jump into InDesign. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Okay, guys, about to start back in a few. All right, guys, welcome back. All right, I was just doing some updates to the website for our next adventure. Right. All right, let's see. Yeah, I see a couple of you here. All right, just let me get these things ready and. All right, so I'm hoping that you have your InDesign ready. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look into exactly what does InDesign do. Now, has anybody here used InDesign already?
Yes, sir.
All right, one person. Anybody else?
No, sir.
All right. Well, let me throw this question out. I figure that most people know of InDesign. For somebody who has never used it before, I don't know. Addison didn't say did use it. So what is it? What do you think InDesign does? Right? We use Photoshop, we use Illustrator. The last member of the party is InDesign. So Addison, what do you think InDesign does? Any clue?
Based on the name of the software, I'd assume that it's aids in designing a 2D in a 2D aspect. Like something like Canva. That's what I'm thinking. You know, Canva, sir. You probably do. You are literally the computer genius. But something like Canva. That's what I'm thinking.
Well, you're not wrong, but didn't hit the bullseye exactly. What about, I don't know, Tyrese? What do you think InDesign does, Tyrese, apart from design? Right? So yes, it does do design. It does help in designing. But what is its main purpose? Anybody? Tyrese, you there? No, maybe not. All right. Let me just throw the question out. Anybody? What do you think it does? Guys? Who is it that said they use InDesign already?
I did say. So
Right.
I'd say,
What do you think?
presentation wise, it helps with presentation.
Okay. I mean, it does. I mean, let's think about it. So far we've used Photoshop. We know what Photoshop is good for. We use Illustrator. We know what Illustrator is good at, vectors and line work and that stuff. So InDesign is the third member of the club, right? And you could call them the absolute trifecta in digital designing, right? One for vectors, one for pixels, and one for, and the word is the word is, oh no, where did I put it? Crap. Okay, pick up it. I seem to have closed it by accident. Right. Right. The word is desktop publishing. So notice how we kind of started from the popular terms. We started from Photoshop, and most people have heard of Photoshop. It's literally a part of our everyday slang, right? When we say photoshopped, we literally think enhance. But then we went to Illustrator, which was a little less popular. And then InDesign, which is even typically less popular than Illustrator, right? But anybody that does graphics needs to have in their tool belt a program for dealing with images, a program for dealing with vectors, and a program for dealing with desktop publishing, right? Because chances are, if you're in graphics, you are going to be dabbling in any one of these at any given time. So the question is, what is desktop publishing, right? And in simple terms, it is the integration of text and graphics, right? Now, it is not just a Word document, because a Word document can have text and graphics, but it is usually done in a way that is laid out with a more design-centric point of view, right? So I don't know if you've ever heard of BIM. Anybody here have heard of BIM? This is a term used in our industry. Anybody? BIM? Anybody ever heard of BIM? No?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, you're going to be starting BIM, which is Building Information Modeling. You're going to be starting that next semester. But essentially what it is, it combines pretty much all of the main attributes of this field of architecture and construction into one interface, right? Think of it as like when you say Microsoft Office.
Building information modeling. Oh,
Right,
my
that
laptop
is
did
it.
chip out.
Oh, okay. So you knew. Okay, cool. All right. So when you think about, if I say to Kemal, Office applications, right? What comes to mind, Kemal? When I say Office computer applications, what kind of programs come to mind?
Like Excel, Microsoft Access, Microsoft Word.
Exactly. And each of those have specific uses in the office. But Word or Excel is Excel is not the only spreadsheet software that exists. At the end of the day, what it does is spreadsheets, right? And same for Word. Word does documents and so forth and so forth. But all of them come together to form what's called like Office applications, right? And it's the same thing what BIM does. It's the coming together of the things that make up the built environment. And desktop publishing does the same thing. It carries together pretty much everything that has to do with digital design and gives it a avenue to be, the word is published, right? So we're going to look at that word. So it is a culmination of software, hardware, and design techniques to facilitate publishing. So when you see here the word publishing, maybe some of you think about books, right? Which is rightfully so, because we normally associate publishing with books. But here's the first thing to understand. Desktop publishing is sometimes confused with word processing, right? And there's a big difference between the two, right? So word processing really came from typewriters, and probably most of you maybe know typewriter, maybe you've seen it in a movie. But essentially in the office, you used to have an admin person that normally types up documents, right? For meetings and all of these things. And I mean, if you just need to type up a document, you don't need to use, I don't know, an Adobe program to do that. As a matter of fact, no software was used to do it. It was just that on a typewriter, because all you need is text, right? So word processing is simply that. It is just text on a page, right? But desktop publishing is usually a streamlined process. And even if you look on this image that you see here, right? There are many steps that is taken through desktop publishing, right? So, from conversing to typing up what is to be published, to doing illustrations, layout, and then, of course, if you're talking about publishing on a broad scale, you're talking about things that involve the use of machines to produce them. If you remember when we looked on the Illustrator story a couple of weeks ago, and we saw all of those tools that were used to, back in the day to create art graphic design, right? So we use French curves and T-squares and those things. That is even a part of the step of desktop publishing before it goes into the public's purview. And this is what the word publishing really signifies, that when you publish something, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a book and you have an IBSM number and you can buy it on Amazon or whatever, or in a bookstore. Publishing simply means that you have released it to the public, right? Because you can publish a website, you can publish articles, you can publish a book. So when you say publish, you mean I've given it to the public. It is now out there in the public domain. So desktop publishing is really meant for when there is a high quality document or article that you want to release to the public. So for word processing, we usually use is usually great to compose documents. But desktop publishing is intended to do a combination of documents and text. And then it comes into this word that you will hear a lot in graphic design, which is called typography. And that's something that we're actually going to look at in the next couple of weeks, right? How do you select the right text? Which text is appropriate? I mean, there are people who study typography in 4-year courses. It's like it is its own thing. So when you talk about desktop publishing, it's like the coming together of images and text into one medium, and then you give that medium to the public, right? So word processing is usually much less complex. Like think about the essay that you did for your history project, right? Usually when you're writing essays, it is not desktop publishing. You just need to write the text. In most cases in academia, you have certain things like it must be double spaced and have an indentation and have paragraphs and word counts. Those things are word processing. You don't need a desktop publishing program to do that. It is less complex because it's just text on a page, right? But desktop publishing is a little bit more complex because you have images and all of these things that are shown, right? So if we should put on a graph starting from the simplest form of text editing to the most complex form, right? Anybody use Notepad in Windows? Anybody know of Notepad? It's pretty much the simplest text editing software that you can use. Notepad has been around.
No.
What was that?
So I'm saying I've used it before in high school.
Right. Exactly. And guess what? People who write computer code still use it because they don't need things like bold or italic or fonts and those kind of things. So that on the scale of desktop publishing, that is like the simplest form of editing. And as you go up the scale, then there is word processing. So that is using like Microsoft Word, or I don't remember what the Mac equivalent is. Anybody remember the one on the Mac? Let me see. Mac, you have numbers. You have nobody? No Mac users in the house?
Yes, sir.
What's the Mac desktop apps again?
What do you mean? What's the Mac desktop apps? Like,
The Mac Office apps.
oh,
We
oh,
have
yeah, we have pages, we have numbers.
right. That's what I was trying to remember. Right. And then if you go up another notch, you have Microsoft Publisher, right? I think there is one for the Mac. I don't remember what that's called, right? And then if you go up another step again, then you have programs like InDesign. So this gives you an idea of the different levels of desktop publishing, right? And depending on what you're doing, they might need different levels. If you just need to do an essay, for the purpose of, I don't know, you're writing an article, you need to do it in word processing. You don't really need to go up to the next level of using Publisher or InDesign. If you're going to be writing something like code that doesn't even need any form of formatting, then you can use Notepad, right? Maybe you want to save a note of something like a password or something like a sticky note where you don't need that level of complexity. Then you can use simple programs like Notepad. But when you want to lay out multi-page documents and graphics and text in very specific ways, this is where you go up to InDesign. Now, the reason why you guys are learning desktop publishing, and I would say starting at the highest level, is because you guys do graphic publishing pretty much every couple of weeks. In the form of what? How do you do that, guys? Anybody?
The presentations,
Through what?
presentations, like the projects.
Exactamundo. That is true. Right? So for example, eggs. Let's see if I can preview this. Nope, it is too big to preview. Okay, hold on. Right, so when you guys go to do your studio presentations, that is a form of publication, right? You are publicizing your design to the rest of your design studio group. And in order to do that, you need to lay out text and images and all of these, in some cases even videos, to present, right? So when you're talking about laying out image and text, right? And here are some examples here that I have. Right. Right. So you're doing a combination of text and images and graphics and arrows and symbols and all of these things. These are scenarios where you would want to use these kind of programs. Now, more specifically, InDesign is primarily used for multi-page publishing projects. And when I say multi-page, I'm talking about like books and magazines and those kind of things. Now, you can use InDesign to lay out things like your presentation board, right? You can even use InDesign to design things like flyers, right? And that is when we kind of come to this conversation about the lines are blurred between applications. If you look on this flyer on the right, any one of these programs could be used to create this flyer. You could create this flyer in Word, PowerPoint, or even Publisher. Notice I didn't put Excel, obviously. You wouldn't use that program to design a flyer. But you could also design this flyer in Illustrator, Photoshop, and InDesign. Now, let me put another question out there to you guys. So for example, Dominique, right? What program do you think would be best to design this flyer, in your opinion? What do you think? Now, let me ask you, what would you use? You there, Dominique?
Yeah. It's further on
Yeah, which one of these? So which one of these programs on the left here, which one of these programs would you use to create this flyer?
I guess I use yeah.
You'd use what? Your mic sound a little muffled. You'd use which program? Yeah, I can hear you. Which one you said?
I guess I use Illustrator.
Oh, Illustrator. Okay, cool. All right. All right. Let me get at least two more. Who wants to volunteer? What program would you use?
So I would kind of biased, but Photoshop.
Photoshop? All right. Anybody else? Doesn't matter if you think it's right or wrong.
Based on what I have experience with, I would have went to Word first.
Go to Word. Okay.
That's what I'm familiar with.
Exactly. Cool. 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 All right. Anybody else? Let's get one more.
I'd probably use Canva. I'll be honest.
Canva. See, I didn't even put that on the list. Thanks. I'm gonna add that for the students next year. So yeah. Those
Exactly, sir. This entire time I was thinking Canva.
well, there you go. And what I'm trying to say is that all of these programs, including Canva, and maybe others that I don't know about, could be used to make this flyer on the right. So what happened is that when it comes to desktop publishing, the bar has raised. You know, before you would not use Word to do this flyer. You would only use Word to type up a document, and you would have to use Publisher to create this flyer. But now almost every program can create this flyer. And it's not to say that using Word or PowerPoint or Publisher is using the quote-unquote wrong program, right? In some cases, it might be easier to use Word, even if you know how to use InDesign, right? So what I'm getting at is to say that when we talk about desktop publishing, we have to kind of think about it in different realms. Desktop publishing as it relates to like flyers and maybe presentation boards and those things, the game is wide open. You no longer, it is no longer, I would say, a must be best practice to use InDesign to do those designs. You can use other programs to do it. It gets a little, like for example, you would not use Word to do a layout for your studio presentation board, but Word could potentially be used to do that, but you just wouldn't. It would be impractical and difficult. But you could use Word to do this flyer. So you have to judge how far up the complexity scale you need to move based on what type of desktop publishing you're going to do, right? Now, one thing is for sure, when it comes to application made for designers, then you're talking about the bottom three. That's these three here. And you guys, every one of you in this class are designers. Now, I'm not saying that if you work in an office, you don't use a Word app, but just think about that for a bit. Because you are designers, being a designer means you need the flexibility to, let's just say, spread your wings, right? You might be doing something and you realize, oh, this thing looks better or this works out better. You need the flexibility to do that, and the designing programs will give you more flexibility. So that's the first thing that will help to guide you guys in choosing the right program. That I believe as designers, you want to be geared more towards programs that are made for designers, right? Because the top programs are mainly for use in the office. And yes, designers are in the office, but you guys are in a professional designing environment, right? Not necessarily like just a graphic, a person who does admin work and also does graphic admin work as well. You guys are the design professionals. So the InDesign features tools that is unique to professionals. You guys are heading along the spectrum of becoming design professionals. So you want to be using the programs that are geared towards you, right? Now, right away, like when you open InDesign, you can immediately see a correlation between that and like Photoshop and Illustrator and those things. It uses the same kind of language, right? So this is why for you guys now going forward, you would be using InDesign to do more of your layouts and publications. Now, there's one point I want you to remember, if anything, and it is that you know what each one of these are great at, right? In simple terms, Illustrator for vector, Photoshop for images, and InDesign for documents. That is the core of each one of these programs. Yes, any one of these programs could be used to create this flyer, but the core of the programs are Illustrator for vectors, line work and that stuff, Photoshop for images, photos, and InDesign for documents. When you say documents, we are mainly referring to multi-page documents. So yes, technically you can have a single page document, but InDesign shines when it comes to multi-page documents. All right. And that is the key 3 things that you need to remember going forward. Right. So InDesign uses boxes that are called frames, and the frames can be resized. So for example, this box that you're seeing here is what they refer to as a frame. And in a frame, you can put anything, whether text or images, right? Now, the other thing, if you notice, the default layout of InDesign, it is meant to be laid out like a book. Like this is how when the program opens, it presents itself to you. So right away, you know that, okay, this is a document editing program, right? Now, there are people out there who use InDesign to do like a poster, which is fine. And there are people that use Illustrator to do a document, which is fine. But if you were to do a 50-page document, like imagine for those of you who use Photoshop, if you were to do a 50-page document in Photoshop, what would that mean for you? Yeah, you would have 50 PSD files. Say again?
So I was saying it could have 50 layers.
Yes, you could technically, right? Most people will end up with 50 PSD files, right? And then, the way that the page communicates with each other, things like numbering, you want to insert a page, you want to remove a page, and then it would be very heavy because it is pixel based. Next, you could use Illustrator to do a multi-page document, but it's the same thing. Once you go up into the high numbers, it becomes much harder to do things like master slides. So for example, on a master side in InDesign, I could say, put my page number here. And it will automatically put the page number there for every page. Or maybe there's a graphic that's supposed to go on every single page, right? Like using Illustrator or Photoshop, you would have to manipulate every single page to update the graphic. Whereas in InDesign, it is made to duplicate elements on different pages, right? So there are little things like that that makes your document editing life far easier in InDesign, right? Now on the flip side, you could use InDesign to do a billboard design. You don't have to use Illustrator to do that either. InDesign also has vector, just like Illustrator, right? It has vector tools. So this is where the lines kind of get blurry, because it's like you're saying, that's why you have some people saying, no, I use InDesign to do everything. I use it to edit images, I use it to do vector, and I use it to do documents. But what I'm saying to you guys as design professionals is that each of these programs shines in a different area. And once you start to bend the rule of a program to do something else, then you're going to have a much more harder time, right? So yes, InDesign can do vector. Yes, Photoshop can do vector, but none of them does it with the ease and flexibility like Illustrator, right? Now, the way that InDesign is meant to work is that the only thing that you create in InDesign is really layout and text. So let me repeat. The only thing you usually create in InDesign is literally text, paragraph, and where you place them. Everything else is meant to be done in other programs. So for example, if you have a floor plan, the floor plan line work would be done in Illustrator, right? The photo that needs to be edited of what the floor plan looks like, or maybe some of the furniture that you're using on the floor plan, those images would be edited in Photoshop. And then both of those would be inserted on an InDesign page before it is sent for publishing. So that is really how it is meant to use, right? So InDesign includes basically everything that Word has, but Word does not have everything that InDesign has. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because there are other little things that Word does that InDesign don't really do, but I'm talking as it relates to desktop publishing. So think about all the features that Word have for those of you who use Word a lot, right? And if you really use Word, I mean, yes, we type documents in Word, but when you guys start to do like massive documents, like your thesis or dissertations or doing reports, multi-page reports, then you start to use features like header and footer and footnotes and table of contents and these are things that you probably learn in your communication classes, right? But all of these features of word processing are included by default in InDesign. But InDesign now layers on top of that tools that you would find in Illustrator or Photoshop, right? Now, normally for the highest level of publication, so for example, you have firms out there that does publication, they do books. And just like how you have an architecture firm that uses Revit and AutoCAD and everybody has to work together to do this drawing, you have publication firms out there that uses InDesign and Photoshop and all of these things. And this is where InDesign is used to do collaboration. So you would have, for example, a multiple editors, like think about a magazine, and you have like 5 different people that are inserting text. InDesign allows persons to collaboratively edit the same document at the same time, right? Now, we won't necessarily be doing that in architecture per se, but I'm just showing you how it is used, right? So this is just kind of summarizing what we spoke about. Photoshop is good for photos, artwork, web graphics. Illustrator is good for things like logos, icons, floor plans, line work, and InDesign, multi-page and single-page documents, right? All right. Now, what you're going to find happening now is that because you're loaded now with these three major software types, you're going to be finding yourself wondering, when should I use Photoshop? When should I use Illustrator? And when should I use InDesign? Because now you know these three programs, and you know that all of them can kind of do what the other one does, but not as well as them themselves. And also remember that Adobe is not the only program that does these things, but they're just the most popular. Just like how AutoCAD is not the only like drawing program out there, but it is certainly the most popular. And it's what you call industry standard, and we'll be teaching you industry standard. All right. Now, we're going to dive into touch a little bit on the fundamentals of design, because in order to use the InDesign, that is going to be divided amongst our next assessment that we're going to be doing over the next couple of weeks, right? So if you go to the class website now and you hit refresh, if you just hit refresh on the class website, you will see that the studio-based assignment has become active. All right. Now, if I click that, this is what we're going to be doing, right? Now, this is kind of going to be broken down into three ways. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to learn InDesign. That is the first thing that we're going to tackle. Then we're going to learn how to organize our content, how to identify visual themes, how to use word and images and references, and then we're going to create a beautiful presentation layout for one of our studio projects. So remember, I told you that you would be using one of your studio projects for DDM. We're almost ready to do that. And if you look on this flow that we have on the mirror board, down at the very end, we see these awesome presentation board layouts. And we are going to be creating one of these layouts from your studio project, right? Now, the same images, floor plans, photographs, all of the things that you use for your studio project, you're going to take them into DDM, and we are going to use it to create to create a presentation board, right? Now, that's going to be over the next couple of weeks. I'm just giving you the heads up from now, right? This is ultimately where we want to be. And we're going to learn how we do these fantastic layouts in architecture, so that you guys are ready for next semester when you're going to be able to use the computer to lay out your studio work, right? We're going to go through, how do we determine to make something? How do we determine a theme to lay out our graphics? Is it just that one comes to your mind, like thief in the night, and you just suddenly a light bulb goes off and you're like, oh, I'm going to do this awesome presentation where I'm going to have a section, I'm going to put the text here, how do we come up with these things? We're going to go through a step-by-step process, and I'm going to, hopefully by the end of this process, you guys can be creating these beautiful presentations by combining Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign, right? But before we go any further, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to learn InDesign, and we have a small exercise that we are going to be doing today. goes here. Right. And this exercise is going to be 5%. And along this journey that we're going to be doing here, some of these activities, you will pick up a 5% here and there. So like this first one that we're doing, this first exercise in InDesign is going to be 5%. And some of them are going to be done as class activities, and some of them done as graded work, right? So it varies, all right? So this is the next journey that we are about to embark on, where we learn InDesign, but we also learn how to create architectural presentation layouts. All right. Are there any questions so far, guys? Are you guys starting to worry, or are you excited, or?
Sir, are you just going to tell us like how to do the layouts, or also as in like how to get certain style renderings to add to the layouts?
Well, I'm going to guide you to how to design architectural layouts, right? So it's going to be a little bit of hand-holding, but the idea is that after I hold your hand a little, you use the same process to do it by yourself, right? So this is why we're going to use an actual studio project, and we're going to be doing actual sheet layout, and we're going to have a step-by-step process to lead up to that, all right? Before we do any of that though, we need to know what buttons to press, and that is what we're doing for today's class. So for today's class, we are going to be doing the very first step on this journey, which is going to be learn InDesign. All right. So that is going to be a 5%. So now you realize the exercises are starting to weigh a bit more, because let me see, the other exercises were like 2% each, thereabouts. So now it's 5%. So we're going to be getting a bit more expensive with the assignments as we go forward. All right. Now this, I know these have many parts. This is just activities that we'll just do throughout the next couple of weeks. All right. It is not something where you have this massive assignment. It's not a massive assignment. And you will see what I mean in the next couple of minutes when we start to do the exercises. It's basically the same things that we have been doing, like in Photoshop and Illustrator. But now we are linking it to design. We're not just working in a kind of a bubble. We're going to link it to your studio, to a studio project, right? Now you can select, when we get to the point where you need to select a studio project to use, you're free to use any studio project of your choosing. I'm not sure how much projects you will complete up to that point, but it doesn't matter which project you use. All you're doing, you're gathering all the images, all the photographs, all the text that you have used for your studio project, and we're going to design that. We're going to do that into a digital layout. All right. All right. So let us jump into InDesign, right? This is the final graphic program that you will learn for this module, and that will prepare you pretty much for the rest of your career, right? Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign, or pictures, vectors, and documents. Once you know how to manipulate those, you are good to go for the rest of your graphic development. All right. So with that said, let us jump into today's exercise.